For our next conversation, please welcome Michael Lake, President and CEO of Leading Cities. And joining him is Jordan Davis, Director of Smart Cities with the Columbus Partnership. Back with them is the Hill's Reid Wilson.
All right. Perfect. Well, thank you again for joining us this morning. And Jordan and Mike, thank you both for being here. I'm glad there was a question about 5G towards the end of that last panel, because I wanted to start with some similar topics. We've been talking about smart cities for a long time. How close are we to seeing the smartest possible city?
I don't know if it's a destination. I think it's a journey. I am not confident that even if we make the greatest strides, we'll not have even more innovative ideas of where the next wave of work should go. So I think in this era, we still have a long way to go to really fully even deploy some of the great ideas that we have that we're even talking about today.
I agree completely. You know, the term smart cities is a fairly new term, about a decade old. But the concept behind what is a smart city is as old as cities themselves. It's whether you're talking about the Romans that built aqueducts to bring water into cities, or paving roads with large stones, now modern day pavement and sewers and traffic lights and street lights. These are all smart city solutions. So really, to me, smart cities is just another way of saying evolution of cities. And this particular wave of evolution certainly involves a lot of technology, although Leading Cities' point of view on this is that smart cities are not just about technology. It's very much about the, call it user experience in a city, and the equity, the sustainability, the resiliency of a city. And to answer your question directly, I think we still have a long way to go.
Talk a little bit more about that user experience. How does a smart city make my life or your life easier and better?
There's any number of ways, really. I mean, whether it's the opportunity to interact with government, it's the way you interact with government, making that easier, less barriers. It's government meeting people where they're at, rather than expecting people to come to government. It's the simple things that everyone in this room, I'm sure, has experienced almost on a daily basis. It's commuting more easily. Leading Cities just released a new rating system in partnership with Bright Cities, and we looked at 10 different categories, from governance and education and economy to mobility and social equity and things, total 45 different indicators. I can tell you in DC, did fairly well with a B- rating, but not a single US city that we measured, and we focused first on the 24 US cities that were part of the Rockefeller 100 Resilient Cities. Not a single one of them scored higher than a B+. So whether you're talking about the traffic issues that people face on a daily basis, or their ability to interact with government, or receiving the services they need, and the demand on those services is only increasing. The United Nations has calculated that 1.3 million people around the world move into a city every single week. So cities are having to do more with less on a daily basis.
Jordan, what does it look like in Columbus?
Well, on the ground, we're making progress. I mean, it's happening. Government's changing, innovation is occurring, people are getting smarter. We're talking more about data than we ever have in our community. But at the end of the day, smart cities isn't the banner issue you go and campaign to your community about. You're talking about the day-to-day issues that they're experiencing. Oftentimes, if you go and look at cities like Barcelona, who really pioneered, and many look at them as the front runner in the smart cities space, they lost public support because smart cities was no longer tangible to the day-to-day experience of the resident. In Columbus, we've taken a very intentional choice to make our smart cities movement be a resident-facing experience. So our programs are first, our journey of becoming smart is starting with transportation. It's an area where we have tremendous opportunity to improve and to grow. We're the largest city in the US without a real true mass transit system. We're the fastest growing city in the US, expected to grow by another 1 million more people over the next several decades. And we're gonna have increasing issues if we don't start to change it. And so we're having this conversation not only in the Midwest, where we have automotive very, very present in a part of our economy, that, hey, transportation's gonna change, which makes our business leaders come to the table at equal amounts. But we're talking to our residents directly in neighborhoods, at football games, at, at community festivals, talking directly about what their day-to-day challenges are and how can we do that. So one way we're trying to improve the user experience is we introduced in a beta form in August what we've called the multimodal trip planning app, which its name is Pivot. And what that allows is a seamless user experience for transportation for a resident in our community. So if I were to use this application today, I would go from my apartment and I would get a scooter downstairs, take it to the closest bus stop. I would take the bus, the rapid bus, right up direct to a suburb where I will have hailed a cab that's there waiting for me based off when my bus ends. And then it will take me direct to the front door of my final destination. And I can now do that in one seamless planning experience in one app. And eventually the vision is that we'll be able to bring payment into that, so that then you'll be able to plan, book, and pay for a journey of that kind in our community. And that is about connectivity, it's about data sharing, it's thinking at a systems level. It's taking both the city and the transit agency and our private sector to all come together and collaborate. And as long as we keep that human in the center, we can do some really amazing things, but there's a lot of hard conversations and a lot of big ideas that need to be entertained before we even get there.
Yeah, can I just add one thing? So Columbus is doing some amazing things around transportation, really leading the way here in the US. And just to come back to the point that this is an evolution. So what Jordan just described, I mean, think how much easier that user experience is to use every mode of transportation available to you through one app. Just to give you a global example, the city of Cascais, which is just outside of Lisbon in Portugal, developed something similar. And the challenge, and this came up in the last panel about standards, but there's a lack of interoperability. So you go from Cascais to the train station, where most people are commuting into Lisbon. As soon as you get off the train in Lisbon, now you need 4 different apps to get from the train station to the office. So I see that this is just to give an example of this constant evolution, and that we will never truly achieve smart city because it constantly moves forward. That the next thing Columbus will be doing is looking at how it can develop this app on a regional basis, state basis, national basis, global basis. And so the evolution continues.
Okay. 5G has become the big talking point in recent years. How is that helping smart cities like Columbus evolve?
Well, 5G isn't totally optimized and here yet. So there's a lot of incredible ideas of what's possible, which is changing the conversation. We are deploying DSRC in our connected vehicle environments due to the federal investment that was made in our community. And we're learning a ton. In a community like ours, we see that we need to future-proof ourselves. And it's not our decision to decide who wins, who loses, what's going to be needed, but that we've provided a platform and a proving ground where we can ground truth and understand what the benefits of all of it's going to be. So we're working with our telcos, we're exploring what the 5G capabilities are. But I would say when we talk about sensors and all of this connected vehicle environment, we're all kind of waiting for the first person to come into the middle to integrate all of this, right? But we have to start having really real conversations about what that's going to take and what the give and take is going to be. Because I can tell you Columbus isn't going to become a Qualcomm city exclusively or a Verizon city exclusively. It's going to be a variety of partners. And how do we start to build that interoperability and that network and that ecosystem that really optimizes it? So if I have sensors on my street poles, sensors in my vehicles, sensors in my water meters and my electric meters, and all of those are niche platforms, we're not optimizing these investments. And I our governments can't afford to do that, right? We have to think about how are these things becoming a system and integrated and interoperable. We have an idea of building an operating system for cities that will facilitate this interoperability with real-time data exchange that we've built out with Accenture. But I'll tell you, it's a really, really hard thing to do. So as we're painting this vision of what's possible, I think my contribution would be to it is let's think about how we come together to think of a city as a system. And we can't have these niche we can't re-silo ourselves. Let's not do it again. Let's be together and thinking about how we can collaborate.
So I'll speak just on the global level, building off of what Jordan just said. I think the security issue is a big question. It came up in the last panel as well. Any city, whether you're talking 5G or any type of smart city platform, technology-based platform, any city has to deal with first, in my opinion, creating that secure barrier. That's the foundation on which smart cities have to be built. And we have seen, just here in the US, cities that have fallen victim to not having all of their systems fully secure. So that will be a threat, and that has to be something that every city does address. The other point that's been made about data and the massive amounts of data that's being collected with all of these, and by the way, 5G will just add to this even further. But to give you a sense of how much data is being created, in 2016 and 2017 combined, the amount of data produced in the world was equal to the total amount of data produced in the first 5,000 years, the previous 5,000 years of humanity. This year alone will surpass that same amount. So the exponential growth of data is off the charts. And so as we continue to deploy more sensors, 5G technologies, that growth chart just goes higher and higher and higher. And so processing all that data, making use of it, turning that data into valuable information that can come back to affecting the user experience within a city, I think is one of the greatest challenges we have in this next evolution.
That's fascinating. So with all this new data, how does that change sort of the structure of government, the way that humans are organized to make sense of it and make progress?
I would say yet to be determined. I mean, you've probably all heard the statement that data is the new oil. And there's a lot of truth to that, whether you're talking about on a commercialized basis, but also in terms of a city's ability to provide better services to its constituents. Better understanding what constituents need. I'll give you one example. We have 311 systems. 311 systems are all about a citizen calling into the city to report a pothole or whatever it might be. There's an organization in Barcelona that has created a technology that sources that same type of data from social media accounts. So instead of requiring a person to speak to the city, because we all know, right? We've all been waiting at a bus stop and it doesn't arrive on time, and you blow a tire on a pothole or whatever it might be. You're much more likely to complain about it on Twitter than you are to take a photo of it and send it to the city. So if we can source this kind of data directly from citizens, and this is what I meant about going where citizens are at rather than expecting them to come to government, you can get a much better sense of the pulse of what's going on in your city. What are the priorities? What are the issues? What are the concerns that people every day have?
And I think that's really real, that we can better understand our community in newer ways rather than old, more traditional ways of thinking of participation, right? But I would also say that the data question is, how is it going to be used? So if I go to my 311 app, or I'm saying, so right now in Columbus, you can go to 311 app and report, maybe you see a homeless person or something and they need shelter. How do I connect them to shelter services? You could go to the 311 app today. Well, that actually that goes to a department that then calls a nonprofit, the community shelter board that then goes to the actual shelter that can come and help them. okay, well, what if that 311 call connected into the homeless shelter system and called direct into that shelter? That's the power of this data connectivity, is that it starts to de-silo data. In government, your data is exclusive to so I procured this solution out of public works or public service, and I procured this data to solve my use cases. But I didn't think that maybe my use cases might actually help Fleet, right, which is in another department, or Department of Utilities, which is in a whole nother department. Or maybe another municipality. So one example, my brother got his car stolen a while back, and we called, and the police said, yeah, good luck. Like, I'm not really sure we're ever gonna find this again. Ended up finding it. It was ticketed in another jurisdiction. We were able to keep calling, and we found it. But what if that license plate, which was on a police report in one municipality, went to all the regional municipalities in the area, and that as soon as that car was ticketed, right, in the municipality or suburb up north, was flagged because it was synced with AI, right, from another system, and you could say, oh, this is a stolen car. I should probably let the Columbus police know so they can tell that resident, and we could serve them better, right, and solve these things easier and faster. And I think that is the power of this connectivity, is to make it work more efficiently, where we can deliver service more nimbly and more rapidly in just a smarter way for our communities to work.
Has Columbus changed the fundamental structure of its org chart based on its smart city approach?
So we have hired our first chief innovation officer in our community, because we realized that smart cities thinking couldn't be within one department. It really needed to be elevated into the mayor's office so it could have a system-wide view of the city. We are in a process of doing data quality, data privacy plans, and so much that's really going to hopefully centralize data long-term and give some enterprise-wide decisions to how data can be used and shared across departments. But while we're on that journey, which in every city is long, these are not overnight processes. I mean, these are multi-year process. We're building a tool, which we're calling right now the Smart Columbus Operating System, but I hope we'll change it. It's not just exclusive to us, it's totally open source, built from the ground up for the future of the Internet of Things, for cities, cloud agnostic, and that tool hopefully becomes the node and the center point for this data exchange, not just exclusive in one city, but across our region, integrating social services as well as other municipalities in the region to really create that ability to use data to trigger actions faster.
Okay. Mike, leading city, you've mentioned a few of the standout cities around the world. What cities are getting it right outside of the U.S. that we should be paying attention to? Where is the future of smart city tourism?
Jordan mentioned Barcelona. Barcelona has certainly been one of the leaders. There was a bit of a hiatus after an election, but the new administration is starting to pick up that banner again and moving forward with it. So I think Barcelona will remain at the top. You certainly have Singapore that's emerged and doing very well. There's a lot of investment in the EU. I mean, hundreds of billions of dollars in the EU, in China, in India. Now, the latter two have a lot further to go, and I'm not sure my definition of smart cities is the same definition they have in China. So I think, though they're investing, it's going to come up with a slightly different product. The U.S. has a long way to go. We don't have that kind of investment here. I know we're going to be joined later today by Congresswoman from Washington State, and she, along with two colleagues, have reintroduced the Smart Cities and Communities Act. It was originally introduced in 2017, never emerged from committee. Hopefully this time it'll get passed. But that's a $200 million a year for 5-year investment. It's a huge step forward for the U.S. But in the global scheme of things, we still have so much more to do, as Jordan knows well. So I think we're going to be looking outside of the U.S. for more destination smart cities than we will look inside the U.S. For the foreseeable future. But you have places like Columbus that are working hard and getting closer every day.
Yeah.
We would invite you to Columbus, of course. We have a great experience center where we're showcasing a lot of the things we're working on in our vision for the future, and you're welcome. I would also just say the grant that we won in 2016 for the U.S. Smart Cities Challenge was truly transformational for our community. It was something I've never seen done. It was the federal government partnered with a family foundation in Paul G. Allen, and they allowed communities to match it. We matched it with $90 million. We were just doing economic impact analysis over the summer. We've now aligned that with about $720 million of additional investment in our community towards the goals. It's a very comprehensive program. So the point being is it wasn't just one research project. It was a total community vision that rallied our community around something. And Canada just did a similar challenge, and they awarded 4 different cities of different sizes. And so I'd encourage you to watch how these types of challenge grants allow cities to write their own aspiration of how to solve their community problems and rise to the occasion, and you're accountable to your own stakeholders, which really changes the conversation. And it's been an incredible journey. Would love to have you to meet some of the stakeholders and our residents, but I could not say enough about how transformational the government can be in investing in cities to solve their own problems.
All right, that's an excellent place to open it up to the floor for questions. We've got a microphone in the back. Any questions? Got ma'am up front. Go ahead and I'll repeat the question. Oh, wait, here comes the microphone. Sorry. It was faster than I thought.
I'm Rachel. I'm a writer and a transportation freak, and also from Denver. And I just want to forgive Columbus for beating us out on the Smart Cities Challenge, but also congratulate you. My question's actually related to a program that I had pitched through Denver's Transit Alliance relating to equity and on-demand rideshare for folks who do not have the resources for any kind of level of transportation, and what that might look like. So when you brought up the idea of utilizing the 5G technologies to have more streamlined service provision, and you gave the example of folks experiencing homelessness, you first have to ask them if it's okay.
Of course.
Shelters aren't always a good place to be.
Yes.
But what it conjured for me was not only the efficiency, but the more humane service delivery on the whole. And if there's something that you guys are piloting or considering in terms of getting that on-demand ride share, instead of a token for a bus or something like this, but some place where people really can be, and connecting them with those services, because those services rarely have any transportation component whatsoever, and that's what that technology could really bring.
Totally. So we're doing 2 things. So our mayor, Mayor Andrew Ginther, believes that mobility will be the great equalizer of the 21st century, and so we've really tried to bring that to heart in engaging with our residents to determine how can we enhance and connect our residents. And exactly to your point, this on-demand service is a huge gap. And so what we're piloting right now, it's in a research study, so it's rather confidential in terms of where we're at in the timeline. But we are piloting on-demand rides for expectant mothers on Medicaid across our county. And this is a public policy choice. The technology is there. It exists. There's an app. It's very easy to use. It's very intuitive. It communicates with the healthcare provider. It's absolutely incredible. But the funding authorities need to see this as a viable opportunity to fund. And so we're doing a study to prove out that the outcomes can be greater with these enhanced rides. So let's get more government money investing in this type of technology that's built to bring convenience and dignity to these experiences. The second thing we're doing, led by our transit authority, the Central Ohio Transit Authority, COTA, is a microtransit solution. So we have a bus system, no light rail, and there's a lot of first mile, last mile gaps. And so it leaves a lot of people stranded or locked in place where there isn't opportunity. And so how can we unlock people's access? And that's how do we get them better to transit? So we launched our first deployment is in an area called Grove City. And it's free rides on the microtransit service, which is powered by VIA, and it'll get you to a transit center for free. And then it's $3 a ride anywhere in the geofenced area. And they have a fast growth plan to all of our opportunity neighborhoods and then beyond to our suburbs. But that's a huge step in the right direction of getting people as close, again, that convenience and simplified connection.
All right.
Now you see why I say Columbus is leading the way here in the U.S. If I can just add one quick thought to this. Leading Cities runs a global smart city startup competition. There's another dimension to the equity piece, one being, of course, financial, but the other is individuals with disabilities or, that just need different types of vehicles. And so there is a program that is being developed here in the US that was one of the 500 applicants this year that has designed mobility, on-demand mobility solutions for people with disabilities and special needs in terms of vehicles.
All right, I think I saw a hand over here, right up there, right there. There we go. Oh, there we go.
Hi, my name is Deandra Morris, and I'm a public health fellow at NHTSA. I had a question just continuing on our discussion of equity. When we're thinking about communities who may not have access to even the technology systems to even request rides or even to use these services, what efforts have you guys made to address that, or are you looking into that further as well?
Absolutely.
Sometimes that can be an issue, too.
Totally, and I hope everyone hears that because it is an issue. It's a real issue. Not everyone is connected. We have done a lot of research in neighborhoods. About 8 of 10 residents on average in Columbus have a smartphone, but very rarely do they have the data bandwidth to get through an entire month with the types of things we might be asking them to do on their phone in the public setting. So we've brought public Wi-Fi onto our buses and all bus stops, but every app that we're introducing will be on kiosks, smart city kiosks in the community. So if you do not have a device in your hand, you can do that. You also, everything that we will introduce has a cash-based option. So nothing assumes that you are banked and you want to be banked, and you have to have a credit card to associate with that. So it will continue to be alongside where you might get a bus fare, you'll get a card that you can then use as your transaction portal across all of our solutions that we're using.
You want to add anything, Mike?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
it was specific to Columbus, I think.
Fantastic. All right. Well, Jordan and Mike, we've run out of time. Thank you both so much for being here.
Yep.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.